Hey everybody, welcome back. It is time for our week 3 walkthrough and lecture for ENC 2210. So as normal, I would love to start by looking at the syllabus and getting ourselves oriented in time, except I accidentally went ahead and turned on the student view. So let me turn that off for just a second. And we will take a look at the syllabus. So as you know, it is week 3 and we are, of course, on a holiday weekend. Yay. But I am recording this on Monday anyway. So this week we are looking at chapter 2 and 3 in the textbook, the PDF textbook. Specifically, we're going to be reading about ethical and legal obligations and writing collaboratively in social media. Many of you had expressed an interest in the social media aspects and in the ethical and legal obligations. So hopefully this will be an interesting week of readings for you. Social media strategies we're going to be covering in the discussion board, and then you have a similar assignment to the one you did last week with your interest inventory, except this one is focusing on things that you have done in official capacities. So your experience specifically in education and in the work world. Now, if you do not have previous work history, then of course you don't need to make any up. But you certainly could cover things that you have done in an official capacity, even if they were not paid positions. So for example, if you had some leadership roles in high school and that sort of thing, but we'll take a look at it a little bit more closely in the assignment sheet itself. But that's what's going on here. And then just a quick preview. Next week, we are getting into business letters and memos and things of that nature, which also a lot of you on that syllabus quiz were pretty interested in. So that's cool. The APA quiz gave some people some issues. So I'm going to remind you when you get your scores back on those to make sure that you check for any feedback. And I don't want to talk about it too much this week in case there are people who are still running a little bit late finishing it, but I may go over it once I am sure that everybody has it turned in. So we'll talk about that a little bit more at a later time. The biggest thing with the APA information, of course, is that you are going to need to use it to cite sources, whether it's for visual items that you use even on these assignments that are really more about you than they are about the public. And of course, anything that you use for any of the discussion boards or whatever, we do want to be practicing good stewardship of our information. So let's go to the module for week 3 and take a look at the learning materials. Here we go. Ethical and legal obligations are in chapter 2, and then the writing collaboratively and social media is in chapter 3. I'm going to open the text for just a minute just to kind of show you where things are and kind of hit a couple of highlights that I find to be particularly important. I think we just have to scroll because I remember last week the little links are not really working for me. So we're going to go down to, that should be the end of chapter 2. Maybe. I think we want, yep, there we go. Okay. So with ethical and legal obligations, one of the things when you are doing writing for work, because of course a lot of the technical and professional communication stuff, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about making documents that you're going to put together for an audience, whether it be your boss, whether it be coworkers, or sometimes whether it be a public audience. And the rules are a little bit different in terms of how we cite our sources and that sort of thing when it comes to making professional documents. But that still means that we have to be upfront and honest about where we are getting our information from. You also may find that you have particular requirements, ethical and legal requirements in the workplace, whether they're set up by your own employer or whether you are working in a field that kind of has some of those involved. One of the examples that I can think of is anytime you're dealing with, of course, health field information, you have to be aware of the not violating HIPAA rules, that sort of stuff. So there are always kind of regulations that come along with the different fields that we may study. So you'll be reading about that and really kind of dig into that a little bit and think about it in terms of how you see your own work life going down the road. Now, granted, you may not have that much experience in that field yet, but how can you see those sorts of things playing out? The other thing that you're going to be reading about, and of course, this is relevant both in school and in the work world, is the idea of plagiarism. Um, One of the things that's really frustrating, of course, in the modern era is the fact that if we use the internet to find information, you will oftentimes find the identical same paragraph on 5 or 6 different websites. And some of those may be properly citing their sources, but most of them are not. So there is a lot of problems with plagiarism in our current culture simply because people are reproducing what other people have done, and typically they are not giving them the right credit that they should be. So this is one reason why classes like this and why having that formal education that you're getting right now is super important, because it does teach you the importance of giving credit where credit is due, not taking the words or ideas of other people and just passing them off as your own. So plagiarism is something, of course, that you're already pretty aware of. But in the work world, we also open up issues of intellectual property and copyright. And so violating copyright law, oftentimes, especially if you're, using something you shouldn't be and you're just sharing it with a coworker, chances are, pretty thin that anybody's going to find out about it. But using copyrighted, patented, trademarked material inappropriately can have significant consequences. So you'll be learning about that in this chapter as well. Unethical practices, just being a good person is really important in writing for work and writing for the public sphere. Not using inappropriate language, being respectful, not doing any inadvertent or verdant, that's not really a word, but on purpose. Things like cultural appropriation, using inappropriate language in terms of people's identities and that sort of stuff. So there's all kinds of things that go along with that. Cultural differences, of course, depending on if you are working with international customers, for example, sometimes the rules can be different even there. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes into it. I like this checklist that they give you with the ethical checklist. That can be very helpful. And then, of course, there's a lot of things surrounding communication and legal issues. So you're going to be learning a lot about those things. In the next part, chapter 3, one of the biggest sticking points, and I think, even in the case of plagiarism, this can get really, really tricky because we oftentimes in the work world are not writing things for ourselves. We are either writing things that we are going to collaborate on, or oftentimes we are writing things that will then be published not under our names, but under the company's name. So whether it is collaboration or you do all the work and the boss gets the credit kind of thing, collaborative writing is a very real thing. The other aspect of this particular chapter is the idea of social media and internet presence. There's a lot of stuff out there about that right now. Many employers are using social media to gain more information about the people that they hire or want to hire or think they want to hire. I'm sure you guys have seen articles on how sometimes an employer will demand that you log into your social media and show them your profiles. In some cases, people who don't have any social media at all, employers might become suspicious of why you would not have social media. Like, there's just a lot of issues around social media and internet presence. It is important to be thinking about that now as you are getting ready to get out of college and go into the work world. What do you want people to know about you if they find you on social media? And even something as simple as Googling yourself and seeing what kinds of information pops up when you are the subject of a search on the internet. So I'm not having you do anything formal with that specifically, but this might be a good time to be thinking about those kinds of things and taking a look at what you're seeing on your own social media. Certainly, LinkedIn is the professional version of social media, and having a presence there and having a coherent presence there can be really important. But being aware of your other social media accounts also important, because those things do have repercussions sometimes on our professional lives. So be thinking about that as you are looking through there this week. This week's assignments are the discussion board, social media strategies. And of course, the questions are all right there. I'm not going to read them to you. You can read them yourselves, but do take those into consideration as you are writing. Make sure that you frame your response in essay form. So you should have at least 3 paragraphs. So that would mean an introduction, body, and conclusion. And then, of course, you are going to be possibly, if you want the extra credit, you're going to be responding to others, but make sure that when you respond to others, that it is an in-depth response. So aiming for 3 to 5 sentences is always a good way to do it. Maybe even asking a question or two to get the discussion going. So once you are ready, of course, you can post that. And then when you want to reply to someone else, you just click the reply that is directly in their post, and that will get you where you need to go. So that's what the discussion board is for this week. And then the written, a formal writing assignment is the experience inventory, which is very similar to the interest inventory. But like I said, this is going to focus more on official things. So you'll notice I've asked you to divide it into 3 sections, past, present, and future. And then within those sections, I want you to focus on possibly up to 3 categories. Like I said, some of you may not have a work history. If you don't, obviously you don't need to make one up. And many of you may not have had any official volunteer or non-paid positions. So you don't always have to cover all 3 of these things, but these are your kind of guidelines. So for past, what is your educational history? What is your work history? Now, one of the things that you want to do in this one is definitely do not treat this like an essay. This should be a list. Use bullets, use headings, make this a report style, not a narrative style thing, especially not with the past and the present. Essentially, this is kind of a rough draft for your upcoming resume. So that's what you should kind of aim for. Now, it does not have to be perfect resume style yet. This is just helping you get all the information down on paper. Typically, when we then go to write a resume, we're not even going to use necessarily all of this, but this will give you a place for all of this to live. So I've got a lot of guidelines there for you. So past and then present, same thing. Educational present, work, obviously Lake Sumter in there. In terms of the educational history, I will note this too. On your resumes, you are not going to include your high school, but a lot of the things that you do in high school, especially those of you who are pretty young still, or even dual enrolled still, a lot of those things are important and can be worked into the resume and the cover letter in terms of helping you establish your credentials, your leadership, and all that stuff. So that's why I want you to record it here. You may or may not use all that information in your resume, but that's why it's here. For educational present, especially if you are still in high school, I would include high school in the past and LSSE in the present, even if they're both going on at the same time, if that makes any sense. Work present, of course, if you do not have a current job, then you don't have a current job, but got all kinds of information there for you. Now, with the future, this of course is more speculative, but for lack of a better way of saying it, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's kind of the question here. Do you plan on having more formal education? If so, that's where you probably want to focus. So what schools do you think you might want to go to? Even if you want to go to, say, UCF, do a little bit of research on your field and where would be good to go, that sort of stuff. And then the same thing with jobs. If you are already on the verge of applying for career type positions, then focus on that. Most of you are planning on having some additional formal education. So most of you are going to fall into that kind of middle category here. But have some fun with it, make it pretty, put some visuals in it, use headings, subheadings, all that fun stuff. I don't know. I know I showed at least one person, but I don't know that I ever showed this to the entire group. So I want to show you just a real quick, give you a real quick tutorial in terms of how to use Microsoft Word to accomplish this. So I'm going to share that here in a second. Let's see. Let's share Word. Oops, except I apparently didn't get it all the way open. Make it a document open that is in APA style. Oh, I see that Word has not updated their APA formatting. Let me just open a blank document and then we'll create it. One of the things that, of course, you're going to be earning or not earning points for is the simple fact of APA style. Not necessarily the documentation, but just the style itself. And so for some of you, if you had ENC 1101 fairly recently, you should be up to date. But APA did a kind of major overhaul of their style not that long ago. So let me show you. I have links, of course, throughout the class to the materials from the library and all that stuff. But basically, APA style has gotten a lot simpler. It used to be that you had to have this weird running head and all kinds of stuff in the header. It's gotten a lot more simple, to be honest. But let me open a document that is already set up, because that is always easier. All APA documents will have a cover page. And most of the documents, if not all of the documents for our class, will also have a references page, because even if you have nothing but the visuals to cite, you will almost always have something to cite. Trying to find a document. Good grief. There we go. This one works. You'll notice this is for a different school, but it's already set up, so I'm gonna use this one because it is gonna be easier. Let's see. I have to share it. There we go. All right, so you will notice that in the header, the only thing in the header is the page number. It's the only thing you need in your header. On the front page, you will have the title, whatever the title of your document is. You will have your name, you will have English, and I'm just going to change this to Lake Sumter so that it looks right for you guys. Oops, except I can't spell today. You're going to have our course, which is ENC2210, Technical and Professional Communication. Oops, except I can't spell. And of course, an updated date. It's got my name on it, so I'm just going to leave it. Here's what I want to show you. So when you are creating a document that is not paragraph, this is very paragraph heavy, but let's say we wanted to have a section here that was more of a report type thing. So I'm going to use a heading. Up here in the little word window, you will notice that there's that little, they call it a ribbon. Excuse me, Word has already formatted headings that you can use. So I'm going to put heading 1 here, the main type of heading, and I'm going to put past education. Okay, so I'm just going to use a category from what we have. When you are using those formats, it is going to keep things organized better, and it's also going to be better when we get to the longer documents like the formal analytical report, because I'm going to show you down the road how to use these headings to create a table of contents. None of these first documents are that long, so no big deal, but this is a great way also to be able to organize things that are not in paragraph form. So let's say I'm going to have bullets, and I'm going to have my I'm just going to be really weird here, but I'm going to put Laura Ingalls Wilder Elementary. You didn't have to go back this far, but let's do it. Elementary, and then I'm going to have Hickory Hills Junior High. We did not have middle schools. We had junior high schools long time ago. And we're going to have, let's do, oh, what's my stupid high school's name? That's terrible. I just lost my high school. Glendale High School. So underneath each of these, I might have lots of other information. So let's say at Glendale, I was in the band, I was in orchestra, I was in all honors. I would maybe list my honors classes. I might, I was part of National Honor Society. I was in student government. And then you'll notice what I'm doing with this is once you start a bullet, you Word will automatically do the kind of sub things for you, which is really cool. Let's say at Hickory Hills, I was also in the band, and let's say I was in the All Missouri Child Youth Band, whatever. I'm just making stuff up now, but I wanted you to see that you can continue to have sub points. You can continue to hit the tab key. If you want to go back, you hit reverse tab or shift tab. One of the things I absolutely love about Microsoft Word in this day and age is that it will do all of that weird formatting for you, and you do not have to think, which is part of my favorite thing. But a lot of your reports are going to have more bullets and less paragraphs. Now, one of the things you notice when I put all this in, I am all of a sudden in the default font. and the rest of this document is in Times New Roman. So let's say I want to fix that and I want to have the same font. I can just highlight all of it and I can change it to Times New Roman. It's not going to undo the fact that this is a header or a heading. I'm sorry. It's not going to change any of my my other stuff. You notice that when I'm using a bulleted list, everything is single spaced, and that's certainly fine. If I were writing more of an essay style, I would keep it in double space. So you get a lot of freedom in the interior part of these assignments, but it still should have a regular references page and it still should have a regular APA cover page. Okay, so I wanted to show, several people had asked about the heading thing, so I wanted to show you that. If we had then a subheading, let's say, in fact, let's do this. Let's say I have the main heading is passed, and then I want a second level heading that says education, except I can't spell it. And then after that, I would have my second level heading that says work. And there's a third level heading and a fourth level heading, and so on and so forth. So play around with it, have some fun with it, really experiment a little bit with it. If it's not perfect at this time, no big deal, but you're going to be really wanting to use more and more of these things as we get into our portfolio and our formal analytical report. So now is a good time to kind of start fiddling around with that a little bit. All right. So that's your main assignment this week, is another of those kind of short reports. Don't stress about it too much. If you need help with it, please let me know. And I will be back with you for sure next week. And maybe in the meantime, I'm sure I'll have something for you in the middle of the week to share. So everyone take care. Hope you had a great holiday weekend, and I will see ya in a week.